So today I am interviewing Jan Kaminski from Applover. Just a few words about Applover. It's a full stack digital agency based out of Poland. Since 2016, they've been around and have been recognized in the Financial Times, in their Financial Times 1000 ranking in 2023. They've been recognized by Deloitte as the rising stars of the region. And in 2020, 2021, Jan and his team were honored in the main category of the Fast 50 ranking. Jan, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me today for this interview.
Hi, and thank you. Thanks for having me.
Jan, the reason I have you today is one of the rewards or one of the recognitions you guys have is in this latest Clutch 1000 ranking of the best professional service companies worldwide, and you guys ranked number 70 out of someone from the last guest told me that it was like 120,000 companies worldwide present on
Probably.
Clutch, and you guys like in the top 100. So, congrats on that achievement first, and then the second of all, I was wondering, was it intentional? Have you guys aimed for the rating, and just generally, what's your relationship with Clutch, and how sort of like conscious you are with ratings like that, and specifically with Clutch as a rating?
Sure. Yeah, we do care about ratings in general. Clutch, obviously, being one of the biggest platforms that aggregates reviews for companies like ours, but also different services, product companies to some extent, mainly services, software development, marketing, consulting. So so yeah, of course we do care about this, and I think it's been a primal. I mean, I think for the first years of Applover, Clutch been a great source of clients. People just visited us through Clutch. And by the way, we didn't pay for the additional support or marketing on Clutch. It was just organic.
Interesting. And so, if you look at all of your marketing sources right now, what percentage would you say of leads come through Clutch or clients come through Stripe so far in the ratio compared to other channels?
I would say around 10%
Ten
currently.
percent.
It's been more, but right now, of course, we're also focused on different sources and different channels.
And we obviously going to talk about that in a second. So for me personally, and for listeners to understand Applover, I think it would make sense to talk about your core business model, how you guys make money, and I'm curious to know how it evolved over time, comparing to where you've been, where you started back in 2016, and where you at right now. Can you share that kind of transformational journey of your business model for us?
Sure, it's been hell of a ride from 2016. That's for sure. Maybe we'll dive into that deeper later. But in general, we started out. We're software development. We started out as a software development agency. In years, we added a consulting component. Right now, we call ourselves a digital advisory company where we do develop products, but we also consult on how those products should look like, what should they integrate with, etc., etc. But when we started, we mainly work with smaller clients on project basis because
Mhm.
obviously we were scaling, trying to get more market recognition. Uh, in years, right now, Applover provides two types of, let's say, I mean, at the model, we have two models that we operate with. The first one is a project-based approach that starts with the consulting phase. We analyze the product or potential product of our client. We do a series of workshops with a particular framework. We do an audit because it all depends on what the state or let's say or the advancement level of the idea. Is it an idea? Is it already on the market? Do you need to do a code audit? Is it something that's built from the scratch, etc., etc.? These are multiple frameworks because some clients are rather focused on technological aspects during the consultancy phase,
Right.
or rather just a UX design, right? So that's the first stage, and then we do the development. We're fully responsible for the whole process.
Mhm.
So we're managing we're acting as product managers, product owners, project managers, QA, development team. Everything is like in one. It's like one-stop shop. Everything is done in
Mhm.
Applover. And the second model for slightly bigger clients, scale ups, it's a team extension. It's a pretty standard model in our industry where it's a particular team. We add a tech excellence component to that. So always our teams have a particular structure. They're supported with account managers around it to make the extension process for clients smoother than as you would just outsource in a sense.
When you mentioned that the team extension is a business model for those bigger companies, why is that? Is that their like requirements? Why you prefer not to do the cost and material for those bigger accounts?
I mean, we do that. It's not like we don't prefer to do it. It's there are two types of client usually approaching you. One is either I have a technical problem and we can solve it with more development. For example, my Jira is just packed with tasks. I need more developers. That's one type of a problem. The second is more I have a problem with scalability. I have a problem with
Right.
testability. I need a new CI/CD approach, or I have a security issue. So this is more of a consulting gig at the beginning. Of course, it involves development later, but you start with a completely different angle. So team extension is easier, that's for sure. Um, but what we would try to add there is this tech excellence component. So it means, for example, a particular, not only the structure I mentioned, but a particular team size adjusted to the client, a particular support
Right.
around it, a seniority, etc. But in general, the case here is usually these kind of like the scale ups are usually the clients that
Hmm.
look for that services. They
Hmm.
already have their managers in place, so they don't need a different company to manage a team for them. They already have everything. They have a whole structure. So they need a team with the good quality team with a particular communications and technical skills and communication skills, etc. And that's the model. Usually, by the way, how it evolves during agency cooperation,
Hmm.
it often happens that you start with that model and then you move into another one, so you get more trust. You're responsible for example, for particular modules, and then you become a part of the organization. Of course, that's the aim of most of the agencies to be important for
Hmm.
the client, right? But in order to do so, you need to provide value.
Yeah. So when you started, what was the initial like main business model you work on? The team extension or the custom material was there from the beginning? Time and
The
material,
project based,
sorry.
so like the cost, the project based approach, and then it
Okay.
turned out to be two models. I mean, we
Oh,
evolved into the models.
and then you mentioned this interesting thing that you're not just developing applications, but you also sort of like help to consult companies on how to better ship them, how to what are the other integrations are available, basically how you can actually build a better product. Um, have you been like that? What was that the offer from the beginning, or there was some time in your company's evolution where you started like adding that additional value proposition? And if yes, then what was the main driver of that decision?
Well, once we learned on the clients, we learned that there is a particular I mean, we changed the model because we saw that we have experience with scaling the teams. So, our experience in working with startups and scale ups was that we have seen our share of startups and scale ups and how they grew. And we understand how to work. I mean, we understood how to work within such organizations.
Mhm.
We understand the cultural impact of an external team. That's crucial, and we understand the impact of such growth on the technical necessity on how to grow a team from 5 to 10, from 10 to 20, from 20 to 100 members of development teams. And as you reach a certain size, you will need to focus on infrastructure, CI/CD, testability, observability, and all the other goodies that lead to a particular development experience, and that
Right.
requires experience, maturity, and certain type of engineers, by the way. And we think we have a few of them, and we think they're precious, and we've helped a lot of organizations to make sense of their team structures on a consultancy basis, and that was the case.
Gotcha. Um, Something that and I've had on this show as well, a few companies in your industry, and a lot of them have the time and material business model. And I know for a fact that some people say that in the software development space, it's difficult to have this unique value proposition or unique selling point or differentiate yourself. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this subject matter. Like, what do you consider to be this UVP for Applover, and just generally, what do you think about this like issue of the unique value proposition, or just the existence of the unique value proposition in the software development business, and the difference between different organizations and companies and what they offer?
Right. I mean, that's even more general, not only to software development companies, to service companies, right? The USP
That's true.
is just usually harder to find. And our approach is that a client defines you in a sense, right? And we have that translates into two areas that we strongly believe that make our clients' lives easier. So the first thing is digital advisory, digital consultancy that I've mentioned. Usually, we're not treated as a development company, but we are slightly before when the client makes a purchase, that when the client wants to buy your services, they usually, like, when they already know what they want, they just
Right.
look for a particular company to build it. Price is very important, and like different factors. When you're slightly before that, so you're in a consultancy how to build that, then you're with a client way faster, and you actually advise.
Right.
You're treated as an expert, not only as a development team, which
Mm,
we try to avoid. We want to be treated as an expert. We try to provide value as an expert. So the digital consultancy, of course, it involves a lot of investment. Let's say we needed to start hiring consultants and business analysts that help on projects. They're either fractional or full time. It varies across industries, but like this is cost heavy in a sense. But on the other hand, it provides a lot of value, not only on the let's say in the planning period of the project, let's say phase of the project, but also once the development kicks off, you have people with domain knowledge that help.
right.
And the second thing is, in my opinion, what can differentiate you is industry specialization. We, at the beginning, worked on a very general scale. We had clients from fintech and retail and entertainment and like a lot of industries in general. Right now, we still have, I would say, 70%, 60, if you come from the revenue perspective, 65% would be general, but 35% of Applover's revenue, it comes only from one industry, and that is health tech. And by health tech, I'm not only referring to health and things around it, but it's also med tech, so medical devices. It's also sports tech, so sport and technologies. It's also wellness and fit tech, so fitness technology, mental health. So there are a lot of, it's a very broad industry, but still you can be specialized in it. And for example, for instance, this particular one involves a lot of investments as well, because you need to be compliant. So you
Right.
need to have a
Yeah.
lot of certifications done. They cost you. But on the other hand, not many companies have them. So you're able to support clients that wouldn't go elsewhere. I mean, they can't, because they need to be compliant, and you have to be compliant. For example, ICO, HL7, Fire. There are a lot of SOC, so there are a lot of certifications around it. HIPAA that you need to have. And the second aspect of that was, obviously, the domain problems. You know exactly how to integrate with particular systems. You've done it multiple times. So essentially, it becomes a problem that you solve for one client, you can solve for another, and it just becomes repeatable. And that's why you win more deals.
Hmm. This I love the UVP, by the way, and appreciate the answer. This unique value proposition. What was the year in the business where you start thinking about that? You mentioned that you guys been more like agnostic in a way, and what sort of like forced you to start thinking about that? Was it that the acquisition wasn't there? Was it the retention? Was it just the generally like the HR thing? You know, like what was like? Why did you decided to so like okay, we really wanted to go in the domain, and when and why
Yeah.
basically?
Well, I think it was 2021, after COVID. So say 2, 3 years ago. Mainly because obviously during COVID, all the agencies were growing like crazy, and if you didn't grow, then you were doing something wrong or in the wrong way.
Right.
Uh, but then it turned out that the market shifted and you need to be different. And actually, it came out of necessity in a sense. We just looked at our client portfolio and thought, hey,
Mhm.
where we're strong at, where we have clients already, where we feel that we can provide value, where the problems and the things I mentioned, like we know that and we can dig into that. So we noticed HealthTech was a really a major, let's say, piece of our cake. And so we thought, okay, we go that direction. And the second aspect was impact. I mean, we want to work for impactful. I mean, we want to work on impactful things. We want to work on impactful products. And I think there's not, I mean, not many industries other than health tech that are that impactful because
Yeah.
on the end, on the other side of it, usually in let's say 60% is the patient, right?
Right.
So it became very engaging for our developers and for the team, because not only developers, obviously, and we noticed that it actually helps with
Mhm.
HR, with retention, with everything else, the projects from this industry. And of course, there are a lot of other reasons why health tech and why we want to be specialized in that. Like obviously, the healthcare industry faces numerous challenges, which obviously are depending on factors like resources, specific area of healthcare, because it's different than the UK where you have NHS, and or it's different in states where each state has a different, let's say, different legal structure, and obviously the location matters. But there are some common challenges, right? So, for example, rising costs, healthcare costs continue to cost, and I
Right.
mean it increases globally due to a lot of factors. And the advancements in medical technology and in healthcare in general, the demand is increasing, right, for services, aging population. So the market is growing really fast. I mean the digital market in healthcare. So we've noticed that, and we thought, okay, we want to be in that blue ocean.
Yeah. Well, listen, I love the domain expertise and the approach. I think it's smart, and I think it's a right call, and especially from the fact that it will definitely help your acquisition because your messaging is more streamlined. The case studies, just generally the buying journey. If you want to be discovered and you want to be worked with, I would probably gonna go for a domain expert in this area if I'm spending millions of dollars on my product, right, developing it or whatever. But I love also that you tied it to the HR. And if you can speak more on this, because I'm sure that, and this is something that again, you and I, we spoke a little during the lunch break, is the fact that um, it is difficult to not just differentiate yourself um, for clients, but also for the people that you are hiring in your company, right? Because in the professional services, like obviously you want to work with or for the best companies, but how do you determine that this is the best company? Like, okay, you go the clients, but being in health tech is also interesting from, and you mentioned already the HR perspective. So can you elaborate and just expand on this thought and how it helps your organization?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it helps, and it not only on the client side, it helps on the HR perspective. Definitely, like one of the examples, one of our biggest clients is a pharma company, pharmaceutical company, and they are building their digital products around this new trend in healthcare, which is digital companionship or digital therapy, right? So the application essentially reminds you of taking your medicine. It's a pretty simple app from the tech perspective. It's just it's like one of their products. So, and it's really big in the CE region. It has a lot of users, and for example, our team that was responsible for that, we know like the developers started approaching us. We're like, hey, look, someone from my family actually uses this app, etc., etc. So they like felt an actual impact that this app helps someone get better or
Right.
stay healthier. And this is an incentive that is even, I mean, you just cannot fight with that in a sense. Like if you have that kind of, I'm not saying all of the products in Apple or projects in Applover are like that, because that would be a lie. And but we try at least, I mean, we want at least 70% of the projects in general in Applover to be impactful. And that creates a huge impact, I would say, on our HR. So, and we
I
communicate
love
that,
that.
by the way, of course. We communicate that very clearly, that this is the type of projects that we want to work with. And we also communicate that directly, but also through obviously PR of the or
Yeah.
the branding, employer branding on the employer branding side.
I love that. I love that. Like many companies, including mine, we're looking for like a obviously social project that we can contribute to. On on one of my companies, Folderly, we do the Stripe Green Initiative, where we donate 1% of our revenue to planting trees, and we've kind of planted them thousands, hundreds, thousands trees already. But I never, like, again, before talking to you, I didn't kind of fixate this in my mind that actually you can have a social mission or impactful mission through the project that you're working on for your clients, right? And what value you bring to them, and that
Yeah,
actually stuck with me.
you can even take it to the next level. There are certifications like B Corp, for example, that it's essentially a certification that you want to do good and work only with companies that do good in
Mhm.
general. It kind of limits your options, of course, but on
Right.
the other hand, it's a very strong statement that, and you can take it to the next level always. And there are companies like that, by the way,
Yeah.
from our like direct competitors in a sense, service companies, software development companies. So you can
Mhm.
do it, and we didn't do it yet because this certificate, for example, B Corp certification is very it's a long journey in a sense. It's not
Yeah.
easy, but I feel that it's we are in the right place in a sense. Like we feel what this message of look, we want to have at least 40% from this particular vertical. I mean, clients from this particular
Mhm.
vertical. How this let's say how this message impacted the organization, and what is the feedback uh, from our people. So yeah,
Mhm.
I would say it definitely helps.
Um, Talking about your ideal client profile, you've mentioned this big pharmaceutical company you're working with, but also on your website you have some smaller application that you guys develop, even in the domain space as healthcare. What's your strategy, or what's your approach towards the ideal client profile, and also how it evolved over time? I'm very curious to also know sort of like the starting point and where you're at, and what was the logic between those 2 points.
Yeah, it depends on the scale of the company. Usually, at the beginning, when we started, the companies were rather smaller. So we work directly with, for example, CTOs or founders of the tech companies that we provided services for. And now it rather like when our clients also grew, we we rather focus either VPs of engineering, sometimes it's the CTO, but these are usually C-level positions in between, or product owners like CPOs, right? Chief product owners that we work with. I mean, they work with us. Sometimes in a lesser scale. I mean, in a smaller scale, these are still founders or CTOs of those companies. But it changed with scale. I'm not saying we have only one type of client. So, for example, enterprise. because we don't. We work for SMBs as well. It just but usually I would say that usually the companies, at least after a round, that need to speed up their development or take it to the next level.
Do you think that the fact that you have domain expertise in healthcare contributed to the size of the companies that you're getting from this domain industry?
Well, um, I wouldn't say. I mean, it definitely helped with the growth in a sense from the as mentioned HR perspective. So it was easier to attract talent. From the growth perspective and the sales perspective, it actually this domain has one let's say characteristic thing that it's hard to get in and the sales process is very long. I mean, sometimes it takes you a long time to get into a client because they need to check like there's a lot of things around the process to not only just you make a
Right.
proposal or an offer. It just takes time. But the upside is once you're in, usually the projects are very, very long. So I think we're just like we were seeding a lot, and right now we're looking for and hoping for to harvest this year.
Um, you mentioned the sales process. I know you have this. I would say that it's a for some it's a unique, for some not, but a very definitely interesting like sales journey, sales process. And you have what's the name of the title? Consultants, right? Or like the
These are
business
either
consultants,
consultants or business analysts. Yeah.
business analysts. So can you speak to that? So like sales journey transformation that you guys have, and why did you adopt it? Business analysts to be part of the sales journey for your clients.
Yeah. So I think if you think about this, no one wants to buy software. I mean, especially customized software. It's hard. It's expensive. You need to understand that, right? It's a pain in the ass in a sense. Like if you look for companies like mine, then you're usually in real, I mean, trouble. I mean, you just need to solve a problem that just you wouldn't go. I mean, you first try to solve it with other measures like your own team, etc., etc. Uh, so it's a complex process. And from our perspective, selling complex processes, when these are sales reps doing that, they're usually non-technical sales reps, right? Because most of the sales reps are not
Right.
technical. They just don't get it. And like they pitch and they pitch. And I mean, it has some conversion, definitely, because we had sales reps in Applover, but we noticed that when we want to make this shift into a consulting company, provide more value, we want to provide more value from day one, like from the beginning of interaction with Applover. So even on this first call that you're with us, we wanted to be able to prepare something, an
Right.
analysis, talk about some particular things that are domain that require domain knowledge. And sales reps don't have it because this day they talk with bank and then other they talk with a retail startup, right? So they just they pitch the services, and this is very general. So we wanted to have business analysts from particular domains that help you and have domain knowledge, so they can you automatically talk deeper,
Mhm.
and it helped a lot. Not only from the conversion perspective, but from the mission perspective that we want to provide value. And a client, when they encounter most of the companies, let's say Clutch, you started with that. So when they have a lead from Clutch, it's most likely they message 10 other companies. So the first encounter with the company, 9 out of 10, they will meet a pre-sales that will qualify them, or maybe not, maybe 4
Right.
pre-sales, and the rest does not have a sales process, so they will talk with a sales rep, let's say, automatically. And these are the same meetings. And with
Mhm.
us, no, I'm not saying we're the original. There are companies that are doing that, but I mean saying like the companies like us, you would talk about concrete automatically about your I mean, with the domain knowledge. So it gives you an upper hand in a sense.
How did if you can share, if you're comfortable sharing, how did it increase the conversion from a qualified
Yeah,
lead to a
from
deal
the
or something?
inbound perspective, I would say it grew from 5% to over 12. but
So
it's inbound.
2.5 times basically.
Yeah, from the other channels, so referral, it grew from 20, because of course referrals are, around 20, I would say like 18 something, to close to 40.
So it definitely increased the closing rate. What about
Yeah.
the sales cycle? Because though the consultants or an analyst, they usually wear many hats and do some other things. And the professional salespeople are known to be very on top, on point with like the follow ups and stuff. Did it stretch you thin in terms of the sales cycles,
No.
or is it the same?
No, you manage it the same way as you would manage a sales team. You have a CRM, you have automated follow-ups and automate. I mean, most of the things are automated anyway, so you don't really need to remember about them. But the things you do, then you have a head of sales that controls it as he would work with sales reps. It's the same process. Just
Mhm.
that the difference is that they have access. So they would need to be like trained on the CRM and like the sales tools, but usually they get it right. They're business analysts. They get it better than the sales reps. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that in most cases.
Since you are, I love this, the concept of like having analysts to provide support and consultancy to an actual project and start thinking about it rather than just basically pitching and selling. So you are focusing on bringing the best people in this role to fit in this role, right? So can you probably thought a lot and research a lot about who those people are, how we can find the best people. So can you throw me a few key characterizations for the perfect business analyst for Applover, or just generally that if I am would be thinking about building similar type of position in my company, what should I pay attention to
Well, we
and
had a
look
very
for?
straightforward strategy. We were hiring people. So, for example, like when you look at the vertical, let's say with the health tech, we have a health tech vertical. It's not the only one, as mentioned, because it's like
Right.
one of what our main one, but not the only one. We do work for
Mhm.
different verticals, but like this is the one I'll give you an example. So we have health tech, and we tried to get business analysts that just worked in the same sector for different companies. So let's say we mainly focus on non-service companies, so product companies, institutions like hospitals, etc. They all do have business analysts as well. So essentially, it's just getting the same position from from different sector. We tried very hard for them not to be from services, because it's easy to teach the service process. Like it's not magic,
Right.
it's not rocket science, and but it's hard to duplicate. I mean, it's hard to replicate the domain knowledge. So we did that, and we created like the squad. So there's, for example, a health tech squad, or if you're in fintech, a fintech squad, or something. We call them differently, but I'm just looking at this from the structure perspective. And these
Mhm.
are the people that were. So how it works, for instance, we had a lot of clients coming in with a request or an inquiry on build me a hospital management system, right? Or a electronic health record system. And
Right.
like once we have analysts that built that in the past for either a product like AHR as a service, or like they know the domain, they know exactly what should it consists of. So we can help with that.
Mhm.
It's not only that, so it's not only business analysts. These are also we also have consultants, and these are literally ex consultants, and we get them from ex EY, ex Deloitte, ex Big Four, and other sometimes more like rather boutique brands, but you get the consulting framework on top of that, because you need it to be based in a particular framework.
Love that. All right, let's talk about Applover DNA. Company like this must have some unique things about the company culture, the DNA. Can you share with me any specifics as well as how it manifests in the operation? Because again, you have this domain expertise, this healthcare. You have a lot of software. You have some compliance. You have this consultants and squads and analysts. Hello, talk to me about the general DNA and the culture in the company and the operations of it.
Right. Culture is very important to us, and it's been always important in a sense. When we were scaling, by the way, the first 40 employees were friends or friends of friends. We didn't have HR until like scale 40, which is, I don't remember from the revenue perspective, but let's say when we started building management, then we started building that HR, like recruitment rather than HR, like recruitment processes. So that's been very important to us, and we personally, I think that there are two values that are core values in Applover. For the first one is influence, since we want to position ourselves as experts. We want to be a part, not only be part of client's team or be partners, because every single company says that. It's like, in order to provide value and in order to be an expert, you need to have influence. I mean,
Right.
because otherwise the client won't treat you as such. So we take multiple measures in how we can create that impact and how we can influence the particular projects, either if it's a proactiveness, some communication frameworks, etc., etc. There are a bunch of tools or processes around it, but that's one of the let's say values in the or columns in the structure. The second one is engagement, and but this is pretty straightforward. You need to be engaged in order to match the first call. I mean, like be aligned with the first one. You need to have that. And the third one is knowledge sharing. We strongly believe that within the organizations, we organize a lot of webinars, our developers, a lot of courses for clients. Let's say we have a big Flutter department, and the client it's a tech stack for a client. So we do, of course, like free courses, free webinars for our client staff to attend and just learn something about the new tech stack or the tech stack that they're not been involved with in the past. So like we really believe in that, and I think we put our money when our mouth is, in a sense. There are a lot of activities around it in Applover. So yeah, so these will be the three values that we really that are really within the, let's say, or in the spine of Applover. And the rest we talked about, right? So like the DNA of digital advisory, etc. This is what we covered at the beginning.
How many people are currently on board as of
Around 140.
140? And then you mentioned that up to 40 people, you didn't have a lot of HR, friends of a friends, very similar to an experience that I have with Balkans. I've wrote this the newsletter, one of my newsletters, about the challenges that or lesson learned scaling from 10,000 MRR to a 1 million MRR, and like the different sizes. And when you have 40 people on board, it's not similar to having 100, and then it's not similar to having 150. So how
Yeah.
was the company culture transformed from having 40 people? Maybe some things that you've had in the past, like for us, it was like every Friday we had like some beer and some table games, whereas now at 300 people, I'm probably meeting everyone once in 3 months or something like that. So
Yeah.
walk me through that.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with a rather theoretical approach. So each service company, I'm sure if you're scaling a service company, you know the terms of Death Valley, and it's been described in multiple books. So there are like I've encountered two in my let's say business
I don't know
career.
this concept actually, Jan. So that's Death Valley. What is that?
So essentially these are typically periods or phases within service companies. It doesn't matter if you're a marketing agency or a software development agency or a consulting agency or law firm, which is also a service company, like professional services. It has
Right.
death valleys. I mean, when they grow. The first one is around when you're 50, because then the first valley is strongly connected with the problem of middle management. Like you need to build a structure. So there's usually founders and the team, and now it's founders and like someone in between the team, and this is hard,
Right.
right? That's the first value that many companies cannot deal with. So we've been there. We kind of somehow pull this. I mean, I don't know how, but we did that. And then the second one is when we're around 100, because then the same with layers. You have like the mid management, like people, and then you need to create like maybe not a C level yet, but like a management structure, a core team structure that will manage the layer, and then there's the whole team. And by the way, then comes administration and finance and ops, and it's very, I mean, it costs money. So your costs and non-billable hours become very, or like very close to billable hours. So essentially you lose a lot of margin. And then you need to scale fast to 120, 40, or 30 because the structure is already there. You just need to add billable hours. So for example, in our case, developers, we bill per, for their
Right.
time. In a marketing agency, I don't know, any specialist that you bill
Yeah.
for.
For us is
So
SDR, for example.
yeah, exactly. So that's the problem, right? I mean, so that's the second value that I've encountered. I've heard there's a third one when you're like around 200.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I haven't been there
I
yet.
can I
So
can speak to that. So after you retire 200, 250, there's a lot of things like employee branding, compensation and benefit. That happens a lot, and then obviously, so it's a lot of like leadership development, and then this team leader, like the fourth, like in the like one of the fourth level, when you like actually they are the team leaders, and they are more closely working with people, not even the heads or C level or someone else. And then these three things are like just intertwined, and and you deal with them. But yeah,
yeah,
it's fun,
that
right?
was my yeah, probably. I mean, as I said, I hope the third valley I will encounter will not be my last one, but in services this is like pretty general problem. So and it impacts culture and it impacts HR, by the way, right? Because
A lot.
so in multiple ways. But how we dealt with that? So, as mentioned, we were always very much focused on internal let's say, promotion. So, most of our managers were promoted within the organizations. I would say it's like 70-30. I mean, 70% of managers were promoted out of the organizations, that 30 were recruited when we were scaling. So we somehow did. I'm not saying it's the best case scenario because I know that a lot of businesses fail because of that. And by the way, it's very hard to, let's say, cancel your decision because once you promote someone, you cannot like just say, okay, you're back being a specialist, because in 90% of cases they would just leave, right?
They
Because
leave the
it's okay,
company.
not necessarily ego problems, but like I'm just saying that it's something is just not working there. So it's also a risk. And it impacts a culture. I think it impacts it in a pretty heavy way. But
Something
answering.
just to add
Mhm.
here, I think that crossing the valley, and probably that's the reason you guys crossed and we crossed, was the fact that we still have been consistently growing. Because when you're growing, you're opening up new opportunities. So in this way, this internal promotion makes more sense. You're hitting your KPIs, you have some positive traction that fuel this from one step to a time. Because I know that many people are not crossing the valley just exactly because they're stagnating, or they've been within the same numbers for a long period of time, and that sort of like eats them inside, because you cannot create a lot from the plateau. You agree with
Yeah,
this?
I agree completely. Although I would add that I know it will sound pretty truistic, but in the end, sales solves all the problems. And
Acquisition, yeah.
if you sell with a good margin and you have a interesting clients, then really the culture and HR, they are not that problematic. If you have that, then usually it's very easy to deal with all the other problems. If you don't have that, then those ones are becoming pretty those decisions become pretty tough. And then operationally you need to be very, very precise
Yeah.
to have the margin to be able to grow and reinvest what you make into the growth, and you're not struggling with cash flow and etc. I mean, I'm speaking out of my experience because for the
Yeah.
first 3 years we were struggling with that. So
Everyone were.
yeah,
Have you
so
been sorry, go ahead.
no, just so like um when I start, like I would say that you need to have two things. So like of course focus on sales from day one and be profitable from day one. I mean, we made this mistake that we were trying to, okay, we'll like zero EBITDA for 2 years, or even losing money each month, but like trying really like, but it doesn't make sense. Like if you're in a service company, you just need to be profitable, and that's the main. Let's say that's all from the business perspective. I mean, from the growth perspective, that's how you can grow. If you don't have that, then there's like
Yeah.
very limited ways to grow. Uh, if you don't have that.
All right. So just to finish this topic, so you mentioned like the things that help you to cross the valley, and so you have internal promotions, 70/30, having people stick, and growing through them, and keeping the company culture. Then obviously sales and the growth. What else comes to your mind?
Counting the project's margin from very precisely, and whether there are, let's say, and being able to, being able to react really fast when something is not or starts losing money or not profitable. I mean, it helped us with this transition to become very much detailed in that regard, and to have a delivery on the process, like advanced on the process level, to be able to set KPIs based on that, to be able to count it. Because most of the companies I talk with that are with the scale, let's say 50 people or 70
Mm.
people, they have no idea how much money they make per project or per client, let's say. I'm not saying the second margin, the first one, like when you don't really look at all the costs, but your, let's say, pricing and the cost of the people that do it. So, well, I would say that if I would do something again, I would do it even faster than we did. I mean, even sooner in a sense. That was a huge mistake, and it impacts your mental sanity, I would say. And then the money flows, and you don't know where, even though you have your Excel or your whatever. And that's one thing. And what else? Uh, from the growth perspective, the hire the first. I mean, if you're a marketing agency, obviously you don't have that problem. But if you're a software agency, hire the first marketer as soon as
Early on.
possible.
Yeah.
So that would be. We did that after 2 years, and that was our mistake. For 2 years, we were struggling. After we did that, we somehow kind of got back on traction. So that would be also the third advice.
one of the one of the guests that been in this show, and that probably going to pause the conversation with him with Matt before ours. He said that he started his business back in 29 or something, or 10, and he said that for the first 10 years he wasn't taking it seriously, so he wasn't like actually investing in marketing, having marketers. And it was like, Matt, 10 years, like 10 years without like that. And so I love what you said. Like I always said that like marketing and marketer should be one of the first hires that you ever make, because it's consistent investment in marketing over time would just get you acquisition. You can go, and you can, with the good acquisition, you can go through different crises. Like you had
Oh,
COVID, right? Like you won't be able to get through COVID if you don't have a good acquisition, marketing, sales in place. You just, it helped
I
you as well, I think.
I have one more that I wouldn't do, and we did that. I mean, coming back to the conversation about the sales reps, do not outsource sales. I mean, in a sense, as a founder, as a board member, whatever, be in the process, or each lead at a particular stage. I'm not saying don't outsource lead generation or something, because you can also. We did that in the past as well, and with different outcomes. But in general, we do it, and or we outsource SEO or other things, rather on the marketing side, and it's okay. But like this, the process itself, don't give it away. At least you're like 500 people. That would be the thing, because we did that for a year. We weren't involved directly as founders, and then we started shrinking instead of growing.
Yeah.
So right now, even though it doesn't matter who, like the board speaks with almost all the clients that are obviously qualified, but like we are there in the process from a particular stage.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. You've mentioned, and you mentioned margins, profitability a few times, probably pricing. Um, and you mentioned the first few years you didn't have big margins. what did you do, and just generally, how do you optimize margin and how do you increase the margin, and how often do you increase your prices to get the better margin, and what should affect the margins?
Well, it depends on the industries, but like the first margin probably should be around 100%. The first one, of course. And I mean, the EBITDA is obviously based on the business and the cost is like different. But what we did, like for example, the specialization helps, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're just, don't get me wrong, but if your strategy is just to be a body in the client organization, then you will have less margin because there's not really
No
like you
additional
compete.
value.
You compete with HR and agencies and freelancers and everything. Like there's no, I mean, there is value in the sense a person might be valuable, but the company isn't really giving any value except for particular processes, etc. But like in general, it's hard to compete with that. If you give value, then you can increase prices. If you solve real problems or problems that matter for a client, then I'll give you an example from the health tech perspective. If there is like we obviously as an organization, not necessarily only have to have the DevOps team, which is obvious for most of software development teams, but we have DevSecOps teams, right? So Dev Security Ops, DevOps
Right.
specialized in security. For instance, if a
Mhm.
client has a data breach or they have some security issues in the health tech space where you have sensitive data, then like this problem can cost you millions of dollars, and you will pay a lot of money for a knowledge how to deal with that. You know what I mean? Like so that's
Yeah.
a real problem, and if you have expertise, you can charge whatever you want for that if you know how to solve it, of course. So that would be the approach I would copy into particular pricing strategies. So like if you were close to the, let's say, industry that you understand and you know how to help your clients, then you can increase prices. If you're competing on something I mentioned, so you're competing only on, like that's why I was saying that on price, then you won't be able to increase the prices every year, for example, or every whatever, right?
Yeah. Um, from my experience, if if you want to go to and be a leader in your space and in your category, and you want to continue growing, and if your people stick within your company, which is very important if you're in service business, for people to stick around, and as you mentioned, work and be promoted and grow. That was my strategy as well. But for that to happen, obviously, if your revenue is increased, then the people's salary should be increased as well. And with the service, you usually are trying not to just go up, but you go wide as well, right? So you need more people, more developers. So for you to go wide and up, you need to increase the prices. So I am personally at Balkans are increasing prices either every year or every 2 years at about 20 to 40%. But as you pointed out, you need to provide additional value, either more results, higher conversions, better value, additional services, additional product. That you can obviously need to justify the value that you provide, and that's why you have more experienced people in the company to provide better
Yeah.
value, right? But the prices should be increased, because if you don't do that, then your margins shrink. So we had instances where, like for example, like even in this year, last year, we've calculated that acquisition costs are going up. Whatever you are doing, but the cost of leads are going up. We don't know, like because of how market changes, the behavior changes, but the cost per lead, cost per sale goes up. So now your cost of sales goes up. So if you're gonna sacrifice your margin and paying more for sales, then as you pointed out, you're gonna be shrinking, you're not gonna be comfortable, there will not be health. So you need to increase the prices, right? To justify that sales. And it's just the organic move that companies are doing. So I love that you brought this up and we talk about this.
But there's also this, I mean, it's connected. So like death valley is one concept in service business. The second concept is the curse of growth, because if you're not growing as a service companies, in a few years, you will go out of market.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're kind of like destined for growth. If it takes too long when you're in the same position, then the talent becomes more expensive.
Yeah.
Your EBITDA shrinks. You just run out of the business.
Yeah. Although I can just something to add here. If you are running a lifestyle boutique shop with like 20, 30 people and you're all developers or you're all designers or you're all, so if it's not a business for like a establishment or like a institution that you're building
Yeah, I
for.
mean, I know what yeah, let me you're right. Let me just add it, like, if you want to sell it in the
Yeah.
future, right? That's definitely, you need to then the integrate. But I understand, I agree completely. If it's a lifestyle business boutique, for example, software development agency, no problem. It generates a particular
Yeah.
revenue each year, and that's fine.
Yeah. I wouldn't even close that. It's a like, because when we speak about like what is the professional service company or business, then you mentioned there's a growth departments, HR, recruitment, legal, operational, admin, all those things. And when you're running a 20 people boutique shop and all of you are designers or developers, then yeah, you have a website, you have a couple of clients, and you all get a salary, but probably no one thinks about the margins or the cost of service or acquisition. You just work with
Yeah.
clients and you have their word of mouth and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't call it as well as a kind of, and people won't be agree. I probably like, again, boutique shop lifestyle, you can work for years like that. But I think for both people on this call, you and I, we don't want to to be in the professional service line of business for our entire life, because as in everything, there should be a transition, a development, a growth, evolution moving forward. And only then you can learn something new and you can actually build something great, right? And not just stick.
Yeah.
And this is actually, I always have been teaching to folks that the decision that I made being in the professional service is one of the best in my life, because when I started this, I was like 22, 23. I had zero savings, no money, no investors, no like connections. I didn't have like a big career. I wasn't like VP of whatever. So what I would do, like that I wouldn't be able probably to raise something. I didn't have a crazy idea, but I wanted to be entrepreneur. I wanted to build something. I wanted to grow. So being the last like 8 years in the professional service, building the network, building the assets, building experience, building the team allowed me to actually become entrepreneur, to be able to then reinvest the money that I'm making or the knowledge that I'm sharing into something, maybe additional industry, agrotech, AI, whatever, right? But I wouldn't be able to do that when I was 22 and I was without actually any experience.
Yeah, I agree completely. I was When I started, I was 22, which wasn't the best idea, by the way. When I look at
Yes.
it from the beginning, from the perspective, I would rather work somewhere for a few years, learn how to do things, because I think I wouldn't be here in 8 years. I would be here in 6 or 5. But okay. Yeah, that's true. Like, you don't need money. The entry barrier is very low in services. You just need, some idea, people, and then
Yeah.
you do it. You can start with your friends and just like share. Yeah, it's way easier than a product. You don't need an investment, in a sense. You just need
Yeah.
time.
This transitions me to my next question. Besides everything that we talked about today, what other advice would you give to new agency owners or those who are looking to scale in your niche or in your line of business specifically?
Well, a friend of mine recently said that, and that's something I learned the hard way. So, tough decisions lead to easy times, and easy decisions lead to tough times. And I think this is something I I agree with very much. Um, so when you just feel that someone, for example, someone is not really suited for your organization, you fire as fast as possible. When you feel that a client isn't, you dump him as fast as possible, etc., etc. Like, the tough decisions are not easy decisions for multiple reasons, but then it becomes easier. I mean, it makes easy, I mean, it creates easy times, in a sense. uh, the other way around works the opposite, right? So that was the first one I would give. Uh, yeah. So I mean, that's the one I recently really follow.
It's one of those things when it's stuck with you, then it's like just you put it on your back
Yeah,
mind and you're like,
on
okay.
repeat.
Yeah, no one repeat. Um, If your agency was a superhero, which one would it be and why?
Hmm. Good question. A superhero.
Or
Uh,
superhero or superpowers?
I would say Superman because he had a he had a difficult childhood. I'm sure. The phase wasn't too good. I mean, that wasn't great for Superman. But then he became stronger eventually. So that would be my take.
I love that. Finally, just a few things. I always ask my guests about some benchmark metrics for the industry or for your business, something that you're comfortable with sharing. So, if you can tell us more about the um, i- I'm particularly interested in this the P&L cost structure. So, in your line of business, with everything we've discussed, what could be the best benchmark for cost of service or cost of delivery, then direct and indirect costs, then CAC in the percentage wise, uh, depending on what the client pays.
Yeah, yeah. So as a custom software development agency, it varies. For example, CAC would be around $5,000 currently, but the LTV of the client is around $500,000. So if you compare, it isn't that much. The lifetime of a client's of LT would be around 2 years, but we have shorter corporations. It's an average, right? So I would say
Right.
it spans from 6 months to 5 years. The average is 2 years, but like
Shoot for 2 years.
what else? The churn. I don't remember right now what's the churn. Although the year-to-year growth, we were growing from 80 to 100% year to
Percent year
year,
to year.
but last year we grew only 5%. So
There was a tough year, honestly.
yeah,
Like the fact that you guys grew was,
yeah,
congratulations. That
it,
was, I
it
think
was.
it was much tougher than anything before COVID or during COVID or after COVID,
Yeah,
right?
the tech slowed down, right? So at the tech in a sense that the money in tech, so it obviously influences professional services a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we didn't really. I mean, we grew, but not much. So this year we're hoping to move back on track. Although just for the sake of transparency, it's not easy still. I mean, it's not like it's not 2021 or something. But we feel that we made a lot of investments in the things I described and I discussed at the beginning. So I think it will come back. So yeah, and
What about sales closing, sales cycle on
so
average
so
benchmark?
sales closing would be around 10 to 15%,
Hmm.
depending on the channel, but 10 to 15, let's say. And the cycle length, I would say, if you would ask me a year ago, I would say 30 days. Right now, I would say 3 months.
3 months. 3 months. And then one last thing on this. Promising marketing channels. Somehow, when maybe because what industry I'm coming from, but people are interested more in acquisition a lot and to like different marketing hacks and channels and things, what other companies are doing marketing wise. It's very important for everyone. So, top promising channels for you 2024.
It depends year to year, but right now, currently, I would say the various ABM strategies that you can implement. So, account-based marketing, obviously, uh, just don't go broad, go very, you know, in a very detailed way. And what works for us is event strategy. So we organize a lot of private events, networking events, no conferences. I mean, roundtables, dinners,
Yeah.
like events, close events. It works perfectly. In the end, if you sell a very expensive service, you need to know your clients quite well. Like it's hard to. I mean, it's possible during COVID. That was more, let's say, do the more often in a sense. Like someone buys like spends $1 million on software and they only meet you online. I mean, it ended. These times ended. I think like you need to know those people. To be honest, like
Yeah.
imagine that. Like if you were to spend, if you're a CEO or I don't know, you're a VP of engineering of a company and your budget is $1 million a year and you want to spend $500,000 for something, like you need to meet those people. Like
Yeah.
so it came back. So the event channels are really good and they're really converting.
Um, I've been part of this really cool event lately. So we organized with the company Chili Piper a wine tasting event. So it's essentially how it works is um, we take Chili Piper, we take Belkins, we did the Crossbeam. So there's this product called Crossbeam that helps to merge two pipelines. So we merged our pipeline through HubSpot through Crossbeam, and we've uh, shortlisted, let's say, 10 companies or 20 companies from each side who are Chili Piper customers, but my prospects or my opportunities, and then vice versa, right? And then they build this landing page, and we choose the topic, and there's this service that they can ship you 2 or 3 wines, and then you have a sommelier or wine expert on the call, and you kind of reached out, get together. So we got like 10 people together, like 5 or 6 from each side, and we sort of like talk wine, and we discussed. And this kind of format, it's not like a webinar type, but you still can kind of go through the agenda. So it's like a soft selling, but at the end, we were able to speak about some things that covered my product, their product, and help us to actually convert more X clients than that, right? So don't necessarily offline events. So I'm
Yeah,
not sure whether you do something like that or not, but that was the first thing for me. I was like, it was
yeah.
really cool.
We do a lot of things. Like we do city events. So like rather focus on a particular problem. We invite panelists, and it's a large event for, let's say, 40, 50 people. We do private dinners for 10, 5 clients. And you can easily do it. Like invite 5 of your clients and then ask them to bring plus one from their industry. And you have 10 people, right? It costs you,
Yeah, that's
I
true.
don't know, $1,000 for a dinner, but it's 10 people that are your client. I mean, your personas, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So imagine like if I spend five
That's
thousand
cool.
dollars per one lead, and I organize a dinner for $1,000, and I have five
Yeah.
more potential ones, so like that's savings. But
Yeah,
it's
you're probably
obviously,
not gonna do that in the United States. 10 people, $1,000 dinner, probably, depending on the place. But I got you. It's still much more cost effective. So I think like your point here is be creative with your approach. When you mention events, don't necessarily you need to get 10 people to Collision in Toronto and spend $25,000 for the trip, rather than like how you can be in the city, get a closed dinner behind the closed door, getting 10, 15 people, and in this way, having a good
yeah.
network. And yeah, I love that. Jan, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. So great to meet Applover and you and the team. And I mean, obviously, for everyone listening to this after this conversation, it's obvious why you guys have been ranked in the top 100 companies worldwide based on Clutch, and why you've been named by Deloitte, Financial Times, Fast 550, and so on and so forth. So, congrats on your success, and good luck to you and to Applover.
Thank you very much, and it was great. It was a great chat. Hopefully, see you soon.